So, we all know what fighting games are. Games that are part of the childhood of every single one of us. Games like Guilty Gear Strive, Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Fighter Z, Super Smash Bros, etc. Games that test your reaction speed and knowledge of the inputs and combinations you can use to overwhelm your opponent in a real-time match. I, personally, have almost no experience with fighting games, but I have experience with another game that can be considered a fighting game, but it's not in real time, because this game is as ancient as humanity itself, one of the most complex games ever created, with a skill ceiling that is as high as humanly possible, and only a few people in the world are able to achieve the maximum knowledge this game has to offer. I'm talking about chess, a game where you and your opponent fight each other for controlling the board and eventually giving checkmate to the other by predicting their movements and calculating the best options you have against him. Because it is a turn-based game, you have the time to think, and different from a real-time fighting game where you are constantly just pressing buttons to see if your opponent makes a mistake. That's why chess is considered a more calculated and harder game. But what happens when you combine a fighting game and chess into one? Well, you don't have to imagine much, because we already have it. Allow me to introduce you to Your Only Movie's Hustle, or YOMI Hustle, as we call it. A turn-based fighting game where you and your opponent have the time to think of your next move without needing to input buttons and having to play off of your reflexes. This game is the most close combination with chess and a real fighting game that we will have in a long time, and it's a really good and fun game, even though the matches can last from 10 to 30 minutes. Yeah, it's pretty long, but believe me, it's worth the try. Quick disclaimer, I'm making this video without a script, so it's going to be a disaster. Also, it's my first video narrating something important. I already had a channel before this one, but we will not talk about that. So my experience is very limited. I'm sorry. I will use my editing skills to make it as fun and interesting as possible. Without not much to say, let's get into the video. I'm going to explain the most basic things that even someone who has never played this game before, if has played a fighting game before, will know what I'm talking about. When you start the match, you will have a lot of things on your screen. You will have your life bar, that I don't think I need to explain what it does. You have things like free cancels and air options. You have your burst bar. You may know what the burst is, but I will explain it real quick. It's a move you have that allows you to push your opponent back in the middle of a combo to interrupt it and give you the chance to repositioning yourself and counter-attacking. Also, you have a pink bar called meter. The meter will charge by moving, hitting, and parrying attacks. It's useful, and I'm going to explain next what it does. And finally, at the bottom of your screen, you will have a lot of buttons that are white, yellow, red, and some other colors that may vary of the character. These are your move options, the things you can do in your turn, depending if you are on the air or in the ground. First, you have the movement: jump, move forward, move backwards. There isn't a lot to explain because it's self-explanatory. Next, you have attacks. Well, attacks are also self-explanatory. Things like punches, kicks, grabs, moves that almost every character share. Next, we have the specials. Now, the specials are moves that vary depending on the character you are playing. These specials could be close range, mid-range, long range, moves that allow you to move, guard breaks, etc. Next, we have the supers. Now, super moves are considered the most powerful and useful moves a character has, and to use this move, you use meter, the pink bar I mentioned before, and in exchange of that meter, you will be able to execute a move that, depending on what it does, it can do a lot of damage, summon something that will help you middle fight, making a dash attack, etc. There are a lot of options you can do, and the amount of supers you have in this game, it's not much if we do not talk about modded. Last but not least, we have defense options. Now, I'm gonna have to explain two of those, but for those that are not needed to explain, we have block, which is pretty obvious what it does, and we also have dodge. Dodge allows you to get away from damage, but for some time you are vulnerable to attacks if your opponent doesn't do anything. So dodge is not as recommendable as you may think it is. Now I'm going to explain what push block is. Push block is a block, but by consuming 1 bar of meter, you can push your opponent away from you, giving you more time to prepare yourself and think about what you can do. This move is used when you have a lot of pressure on you and you don't think you will be able to predict what your opponent will do next. It's not immune to guard breaks, and the amount of times I personally have used this move is very limited, because I just don't find it as useful at all. Finally, we have hustle, the move which this game name is based on, and to put it simple is a taunt. You know, the Fortnite default dance. But this taunt, when completed and you made in the 20 or 30 frames that this game has, I don't know, will give you 1 bar of meter, which is not a lot, you may think, but when your opponent is far from you and you have the time to use this, it's very recommendable to use it. Now that we have explained everything about the basics that everyone knows if has played a fighting game before, I will go into the most detailed and important stuff. I have a list over here made by my friend Kettle15 that he recommended me to explain. Now, I don't think I will explain things that are about a character in specific. I will think about it while making this video. First, I'm going to explain about this wheel we have over here. This blue wheel with a stick in the middle that you can move freely. This wheel is called DI, or directional influence. What you can do with this wheel is get away from the combos, because the direction you are pointing in the wheel will be the direction you will be launched when your opponent hits you. The longer is your opponent combo, the further you will be launched, because the DI stacks momentum, if that is the correct way to say it, and it's very useful when you have no burst or your opponent parried it. Now, I will explain real quick how this can happen. When you have your block activated, there is a bar on top that mentions the parry, and you have from 1 to 20 options. If you predict correctly what your opponent's next move is, and you put that bar in the number of startup frames your opponent's move has, you will successfully parry a move, being actionable the second the move hits, and giving you an advantage over your opponent. This move can also be used to parry guard breaks, which normally would bypass the block, and you can parry the burst, which is one of the most satisfactory things you can do in this game. Next on the list we have whiff, or whiff cancel. Now, whiff cancel is a move that consumes 3/4 of your burst bar and will allow you to interrupt a move or attack in 2 frames, allowing you to change your move if your opponent has predicted or is countering your actual move. Now you have to be careful. If you whiff and your opponent hits you before you can use any of the attacks that the whiff gives you as an option, you will fail your whiff and also lose the possibility to burst in the middle of the combo, which is a high risk and it's not recommended unless you are really sure you will be succeeding when using it. That's why we have this next option over here. I'm talking about the free cancel. Now, a free cancel is a whiff, to call it in a way, but it's a cancel that you activate before making a move and will interrupt the move in the middle of the startup. Now, there are some moves that the free cancel is not helpful at all. I mean, you won't be able to free cancel it, but there are moves that you can free cancel when your opponent attacks you. You can see if your move hits or not, and if it doesn't, you can change the move in the middle of the attack to another one, or even moving or blocking, which is something that the whiff cancel will not give you the chance to do. That's why free cancels are a must use that I learned pretty late how to use. But be careful, you only have 2 free cancels unless you hit your opponent or your opponent hits you. Next on the list and right next to the free cancels, we have the air options. Now I will explain it in the most basic way possible. When you are in the air, you have the chance to air dash or double jump, which gives you movement on the air. That is an air option. When you jump in the air, you consume 1 air option in exchange for changing your direction or going higher or moving to a place where you are more safe from your opponent's attacks. You normally only have from 1 to 2 air options, so after you have used them, you won't be able to move in the air anymore except from falling, which is obvious that is your only move when you are in the air. Next, I will explain something that is the burst cancel. Now, the burst cancel is a move that allows you to counter your opponent's burst by using burst instead of having to parry. Now, I myself am not very familiar with this concept because I have almost never used a burst cancel before, and I don't know what would happen if a burst cancel fails. It's kind of complicated even for me, and I don't really understand how it works, but I know it's a thing and it's used to counter your opponent's burst in the middle of the combo. It's that? Can someone help me real quick? Next, I'm going to talk about a concept I am not very familiar with, but I think it's worth mentioning. I'm talking about the Oki. Oki is a frame trap, I think that's the correct way to say it, that puts you on an advantageous position against an opponent that is on the ground. One of the few examples I can give you is with Cowboy. Cowboy has a move that is the gun throw, and when you gun throw at your opponent when he is on the ground, your opponent has 2 options, or roll or get up. Wrong. Staying in the floor is also an option, but if you get up when your opponent is throwing you the gun, you will be forced to block. There is no other thing you can do. And then I don't know if your opponent will be able to grab you or something like that. Probably not, but it's kind of a big deal when you are dealing with an opponent that knows how to play and is constantly up. It gets pretty problematic. Now, before I talk about the last mechanic that I will be mentioning in this video, I need to talk about the prediction system. Now, the prediction systems are those not after images, but those images that appear on the screen when you select a move. They may be green, orange, or there will be your normal color if you are in a combo. These represent your actionable frames. These are the frames where you will be able to move again and your turn will start. it has a huge relation with the frame advantage. Now, the frame advantage is text that will appear on top of your locking button that can be blue, white, or red. If your frame advantage is blue, you will be able to act before your opponent can. If it's white, you will be acting at the same time, and if it's red, your opponent will hit you. Now, mentioning all of this, I will talk now about the EASA, or interactable as soon as. Now, these are moves that can be cancelled in the opponent's turn, even if you didn't free cancel them. Now, it's kind of hard to explain, but it has something to do with the startup, middle, and ending frames of a move. Your moves have different variations of frames. Who write this? Okay, so in a way to put it, most of your movement options are EASA because they interrupt themselves as soon as your opponent can act. Now, this can be kind of dangerous, and you may ask me why. Well, if you, for example, super dash forward and your opponent uses a move that launches a projectile and has a long startup, you will continue dashing forward independently of what your prediction told you, and you will get hit by the projectile because of the EASA. It's good to know that depending of what move your opponent chooses, these moves will have different durations. Now, I don't think I will be able to talk much more because most of the things I have in this list are about the characters in particular. For example, we have things like the bullet foresight text, something that is for cowboy, the mutant venom wave, something that is for mutant, the robot optimal routing, the ninja neutral, the ninja boost text, how to manipulate the telekinesis with wizard, the juke economy that has something to do with mutant, the cowboy gun throw mix-up that is directly related with the OP, and some other things that I am not going to mention because I don't even know what they are. But this is to let you know that this game is much more complicated than it looks like. Even though there are only 5 characters currently in the cast that you can play, these characters are way too versatile and you can do a lot of things. There are a lot of books and there are a lot of mechanics that can be exploded and they took advantage of. And as a last thing, if you start to play this game, be careful because even though this game looks very calm and everything, don't let yourself be fooled. The people in this game don't sugarcoat it at all. Thank you for watching.